Hello there, I'm Stephen Kelly, and this is my first reflective video essay for our Emerging Technologies in Libraries course. In this video, I'll be reflecting on Eric Redmond's 2021 book, Deep Tech, Demystifying the Breakthrough Technologies That Will Revolutionize Everything, and its relevance to libraries. At its core, Redmond's book is an exhortation for his readers to be early adopters of several cutting-edge technologies, with the intent being to stay ahead of a rapidly changing technological curve. Specifically, he claims that, quote, the future belongs to those who don't merely adopt emerging technologies, but invest in and drive their adoption, end quote. He bores down on 7 key deep technologies: artificial intelligence, extended reality, blockchain, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, and quantum computing, and he dedicates a full chapter to each one of them. His target audience is primarily entrepreneurs, but extends to other tech and business-oriented readers, and that certainly comes through in the tone and content of his chapters. He doesn't offer much in the way of rigorous evidence to support his claims aside from his own experiences in the tech industry. To be fair, though, the purpose of the book is to give readers a big-picture overview and some ideas for how they might want to invest their time and money over the next decade. He does also list drawbacks for each one of these deep techs, but overall, Redmond's outlook on our future technological landscape is positive and hopeful, as long as you get in at the ground floor like him. I appreciate his book, but I'd also offer some criticisms. Redmond is essentially a technology evangelist who's trying to save his readers from being left behind in the coming tech-apocalypse, a revolution that may not actually play out the way he thinks, as his own track record with the fizzled Google Glass fad lends credence to. Naturally, some of the deep techs are likely to take root and become everyday essentials, but not all of them. For instance, quantum computing doesn't yet exist in any practical sense. Redmond is also writing from a position of immense privilege, as he has the ability and finances to experiment with these technologies, whereas most others don't. Don't get me wrong, I'm no Luddite. I embrace a technology that I can, and am distinctly aware of other techs that I'd like to incorporate into my personal and professional life. But my socioeconomic status prohibits it, and that's the same case for the vast majority of everyone else living today. So his argument comes off a bit tone-deaf, much like that horrendous celebrity ensemble rendition of John Lennon's Imagine that made painful social media rounds during the beginning of the COVID lockdowns last year. All of this has me wondering to what extent Redmond's argument is actually relevant to libraries. Sure, I can be convinced that we should be aware of these deep techs and start to prepare for them in our strategic planning. At the same time, I don't think we're exactly the right audience for Redmond. Of the 7 technologies, 3 of them, blockchain, autonomous vehicles, and quantum computing, are largely irrelevant to libraries as they exist today. Another 3 of them, 3D printing, extended reality, and the Internet of Things, have potential and are in some ways being used in some libraries. The last, AI, stands to benefit libraries the most and has made some important strides in recent years, but it isn't yet smart enough to be a major player, especially considering the rigid structure of our catalogs and integrated library systems. Even when it becomes readily available and sufficiently smart, a bigger barrier to incorporating deep techs into libraries is library budgets. It's hard enough as it is to balance the books without throwing in line items for 3D printers, VR headsets, software developers, and the like. Not to mention, I'm guessing the deep tech giants who developed the first true AI or practical quantum computer aren't exactly going to be lining up to give libraries a discount. Working deep tech into our libraries could be a hard sell to make to library boards. Some libraries, specifically academic libraries and special libraries, may have less trouble than public libraries, but even they still have strained finances to consider. Another thing to consider is the opinion of librarians who are working on the front lines and what they think is important. A 2016 study by Michelli and Burke revealed that several of the deep techs identified by Redmond, in particular 3D printers, VR, and AR, are in the bottom tier of techs used by librarians and that there's little interest or need for learning them. Librarians are instead far more interested in strengthening their experience in existing technologies, and in particular, coding, video editing, website management, database management, and user-end applications. It would seem then that perhaps we should focus on attaining proficiency in these existing techs, which we can then pass on to our users, before we move on to the new wave of deep tech. And to me, that makes the most sense, given the needs of the vast majority of our users. In the meantime, there are other tools we can focus on that leverage existing tech to improve the lives of our users, and these don't require as massive an investment in time and money as the deep techs would. On this subject, I'm most reminded of a 2015 article on convergent technology and participatory culture by Hopkins, Hare, Donahue, and Abbott. While most of the apps from their study have long become passé, save perhaps Instagram, the theory still applies. We can stay on the cutting edge of Web 2.0 and leverage existing latest and greatest apps to stay technologically relevant and continue engaging our users in unique and meaningful ways. I think that's a reasonable middle ground. It's probably clear by now that I'm wary of libraries embracing Redmond's deep tech pitch, even if just for practical, realistic purposes. That said, we do still have a critical role to play over the coming decade as these techs come of age. But it's not as early adopters as Redmond would have it. Our role should be to watch, wait, and listen. Gather as much information as we can. Build up our collections with information on these emerging techs, and be prepared to help our users navigate the changing tech landscape with reputable, tried and true resources. We can be the watchers on the wall, so to speak. At the same time, another role we must play is to continue helping our users catch up with today's technology so that they're better equipped for the shocks of the new tech paradigm. Naturally, accomplishing these goals will require us to become familiar with deep tech ourselves, even if only in theory. So even if I don't completely accept Redmond's premise, I'm still glad to have read his book. That's something I can settle on. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers!